Everyone, thanks so much for joining us today for a virtual conversation about climate change and environmental policy with Congressman Fitzpatrick. My name is Emily Wurzba, and I'm a manager of government relations at the Environmental Defense Fund. So on behalf of EDF and EDF Action, I'm very excited to be having this conversation with such a strong advocate for bipartisan environmental policy in Congress. We're so grateful for your time, Congressman, and I'm really looking forward to a great discussion with some constituents from Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. And before we begin, I just want to note that this event is nonpartisan and is not campaign related in any way. But first, I'm going to turn things over to Alicia at the Friends Committee on National Legislation for some brief opening remarks as well. So go ahead, Alicia.
Thanks, Emily. So hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Cannon, and I'm the Program Assistant for Sustainable Energy and Environment at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. I'm joined by my colleague, Ashley Wilson, who heads our Grasstop program at FCNL. And we are so excited to have this opportunity to talk to Representative Fitzpatrick, who is committed to bipartisanship and environmental stewardship and brings a faith perspective to his work on Capitol Hill. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Representative Fitzpatrick, for your time. I am just looking forward to this fruitful discussion with our advocates.
The Senate and House recently passed the Great American Outdoors Act, and the President signed it into law, which is going to ensure our parks and public lands receive the maintenance and protections needed for years to come, including much long deferred maintenance. We're grateful for the leadership role you played in advancing this bipartisan bill. And wanted to ask today if you can talk about the importance of protecting public lands and what sort of impact that will have here at home in Pennsylvania's 1st District.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This has been an incredibly important piece of legislation for me and my colleague, Joe Cunningham from South Carolina, who was the lead. I was co-lead on it. The Land and Water Conservation Fund does not take a dime of taxpayer funding. It's funded entirely by royalties. It benefits 99% of the counties in America, including the counties that I represent. It helps with open space preservation, with maintenance backlogs, and it's also a great job creator. It's a huge economic creator, actually. And most importantly, and I think we all realize on this call, that not only are the outdoors important for physical health, they're tremendously important for mental health. And never have we realized that more than now. How important it is to balance yourself and maintain both your emotional health as well as your physical health. And the outdoors are a great way to do that. So basically what the Great American Outdoors Act did, it was a major milestone for sure, the largest conservation law passed in decades. And I can't think of a better legacy to pass along to our children than preserving our precious open space, open lands, and parks. I'm really, really excited about it. Kudos to Joe Cunningham. He's my colleague from South Carolina.
I think my question follows up on what you were just saying, and that is that I believe that climate solutions are, most likely to succeed if they're bipartisan. But you seem to be a lone voice in Congress. And my question, I guess, is do you or where do you see opportunities for bipartisan cooperation on climate change?
I will tell you, probably my biggest challenge in Congress is exactly what you mentioned. One of my goals was when I came to Congress, being an environmentalist and a conservationist, was to take this issue out of politics altogether. Clean air, clean water, and acknowledging the science and the evidence and the data surrounding climate change and what we need to do to mitigate it should not be in dispute. It should not be political. It should be taken out of the realm of politics altogether. That's proven to be easier said than done. We reject this notion that you have to make a choice between protecting our environment and growing our economy. They are not mutually exclusive. If done the right way, you can advance both. I'm hopeful that I can start to change hearts and minds in my caucus. That's one of the things that I'm there for. If a bill is not bipartisan in Congress, it inherently lacks credibility. And that runs the gamut across all issues. As long as I am there, I will absolutely positively make the environment a bipartisan issue, and I will co-lead those initiatives as well.
I'm wondering what personally motivates you to work across the aisle on this issue. Can you share an example of how working in a bipartisan manner helps you achieve a legislative climate victory?
I really do believe, Connie, to the core of my being, that with all the challenges that we face in our country, the biggest challenge we face, I really do believe this, is extreme polarization and hyperpartisanship. It's one of the reasons why I love my bipartisan problem solvers caucus. If that didn't exist, I'm not sure I would still be here, because they're the reason I'm in Congress. They were the first group I sought out. It's a group of 50 representatives across the whole country, 25 Democrats, 25 Republicans, who believe that government ought to function the way our personal relationships function, that you listen more than you lecture, that you view differences of opinion as a strength, that you want to surround yourself with. You want to bring all that wealth of knowledge to the table. You don't look at people that think differently than you and say, well, you're a stupid or a bad person. That's not how we're supposed to solve problems. You're supposed to say, okay, help me understand why you view things that way. What life experiences have you had that have made you think that way? That's what I wish we could get back to. And that's what our caucus is about. That's why I believe in bipartisanship. As far as an example, I think the most recent one is the one I just referenced, is the Great American Outdoors Act. It was a Problem Solvers Caucus initiative. Joe Cunningham, my Democrat colleague from South Carolina, led it with me. And in 2019, we were able to permanently reauthorize the LWCF, which was only step one of the goal. And this legislation got across the finish line with the permanent funding of Land and Water Conservation Fund. And I appreciate Joe. He's a good man and a great legislator, and everyone who worked with us to get this landmark legislation done. But it's a good example of bipartisanship. The only way that could happen is if everybody put away their battle axes, they came together and they said, this is a really, really important thing that we need to get done. We have a moment here where we can get this done, and it got done. Thank God it did. And it got done in a bipartisan manner. It passed a Republican Senate, it passed a Democrat House. It had bipartisan support in both chambers, and it got signed into law by the president. And it's going to benefit generations to come. So